Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 166, I think, of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. All right, plein air today. I can't get back far enough in the studio to show this, and my model shop, wood shop, is a train wreck as far as space to do video work. I'm also doing a close shot. There's just too much in there right now to be able to spread out. So I've got my trusty old picnic table slash workbench here that we use when the weather's nice, and I think it's going to cooperate, not rain on us today. There's a few things going on, and so I'll bring you up to speed on what I can. I've got a project that has been put off. I've been trying not to bring any of my world into this. Okay, I want this to be about stone, but I understand. It seems like I'm never getting the angel done. Okay, so I'm going to be real honest with you. Very beginning of this project, back two and a half years ago, when I started these videos, I mentioned my mother. Well, soon after this began, her old age caught up with her, and I'm basically her full-time caretaker. And that's between my wife and I, we're just taking care of her, because that's what you got to do with family. That's kind of the responsibility thing, and it landed on me. So that's really had a big impact on my studio time. Nothing I'd love more than to be able to just come out of the studio, spend 7-8 hours a day and just cut stone and just to leave the world where it is. But right now, it's the hardest job I've got is to get down here to work. And so we're fortunate we've got customers that are flexible enough that it hasn't gone off cliff yet, but I've got to get some work done. And so this is one of my invisible projects, and I can't really show you what I'm going to do because it's like an NDA. We just, it comes in and goes out and nothing's discussed. But I'm going to sketch clay up for it because this project was, if you're in the business and you understand, if you order a sandblast job, if you get an item put on a stone, you'll get a sandblast pattern. You can buy books, and they got all kinds of computer programs, I guess. Now I don't know how it works, but I assume it's you can get. It's almost like clip art used to be. You can get all these generic designs, and you buy the licensing fee, and you can sell them. And so they may have a tractor trailer truck, and it's basically two parallel lines that go around the whole thing, and you put that on the rubber, and then you cut those two lines, and you weed it out in between, and you sandblast the V line to make that tractor trailer truck or dump truck or tractor or fishing rod or bass or anything that you can imagine. Okay, well, this is like that. Okay, I don't have an image of something very specific. I have just a very generic sandblast design, and they said, yep, we trust you, Clint, do it great. And so in order to do it great, I'm going to sketch it up in clay first to make sure we're all on the same page before I cut stone. I can't get into that because of our working arrangement that we've had for years and years and years. Not quite 20 years, but it's been over a decade. It's been a long time. So but I want to show you how I'm going to develop the bat, because I don't think I've constructed a clay bat yet for anything like this. And so I can show you how I do the basic construction and give you a few cues. Now, this is a niche. I can draw on the back of this. This is a niche that has a stone that's shaped with it's a round top stone. And it has a niche of a specific diameter, specific shape, and dimension that was provided to me for a quote. And you may not be able to see that, but in this round top die, there's a specific shape round top niche. And the important part of that niche is that you've got an even dimension all the way around that die, okay? I'm not going to proof their work to make sure they made an exactly correct round or elliptical top of the die. It's more important for me as the sculptor to make sure that the bas-relief and the niche that I cut in this has a parallel margin from the apex of those sides where it reverses to go in, wherever that is, if that's in the top, middle, bottom, wherever, that has an even bit border all the way around that die. Okay, so if it ends up being, instead of being 16 inches or 14 inches, say it's 14 3/8 somewheres, you know, because that's the way they cut it. It's more important that I try to make this look as round as possible, and any discrepancy around this top, if there's a variation, I make sure that I'm parallel to that edge. I hope that makes sense. And so the easy way to do that is to take your die. I took my carpenter's pencil and I laid this on top of the die and I rubbed it. Okay, now I can I'll fold this to get a center line. Okay, let's do that now. Fold this to make a center line, and it should line up pretty well. Should be able to see it enough to line it up. And get our fold. And now we've got a center line, okay? And we can measure this to see how wide this is. And this is 18 inches wide. You know, I get flat here on my table. And my niche has to be 14 inches wide. So we're in really good shape. It's just a smidge over 18, okay? And so it's about 18 3/8, okay? And so I've got 4 inches, right, that I got to make up to make that 14. So that means I'm going to be 2 inches in on this edge. 2 here plus 2 here equals 4, and it leaves 14 in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my dividers, I'm going to set them at 2 inches, and then I can strike a line around this to get the bulk of my and I'll be just a little bit over, because this is not going to be pointed, okay? It's more important that I get a model that's pretty representative of the whole situation than absolutely perfect, because I'll end up doing this same technique to put a margin on this. I'm going to go over here on this piece of plywood that I've used before, just for a flat surface. This is what we're going to build the model on. And I'm just going to go around here, try to stay fairly perpendicular, try to get a smooth edge so that I've got a good result. And realistically, I'll go past where my transition is to square, where it goes back to being straight instead of curved. Okay? Now, see if you can see this line. You can see that shadow line? Okay, I didn't pierce it, I just put a line on it. Now I can take my ruler and my trusty, I'm not measuring off the end, okay? Remember my grandfather told me, he'd kick me right in the butt if you find me measuring off the end of a tape measure. Go in a couple. So I'm just gonna go into 2. I'm gonna lay that there and I'm gonna go on this center line. It has to be 16 inches tall. So I'm gonna go down and put a mark down here at 18. And then I'm all set. Okay, let me grab a square just a minute. Okay, now I've got a square. So I'll lay my square. I'm gonna put the inside edge on this. Well, maybe to see better, I'll get started with it on the outside. Then I can run that across the bottom. And I'll make sure when I do my top, this is a little ovoid. This isn't a perfect circle, because if that was round, this wouldn't be as tall. You can see right here that it's sort of egg shaped. So I can kind of guess down here to get the flat bottom. And then the easy way to do that is to measure in. Again, going from a line, and I went from 2 and it goes to 6.5. That means it's 4.5 in. Okay. And just to make sure that my pencil line starts at about the same place. Yep, we're all set. Okay, and now I've got the actual shape that I need. You can see this line, and then down here it goes down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of, just because this is a wonky shape, when you've got a regular niche, you just round top and it's straight, you can block the corners in, just fill them with clay, fill them with junk, whatever, just to build it up. Okay, as long as you got enough clay, you know, and I've got a bunch, you know, it's good to have extra, because I got a lot of clay tied up in models right now. But what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to cut this center out. I'm going to use a piece of strap plywood that's old enough and special, it's thin, and I'll end up laying this on here, and I'll cut this as a surround. Okay, and then I can just take and put it on this back with some 2x4s. My table saw is buried. It's got a bunch of hydrocal on it, and there's metal for projects I got working, and there's the bat from another clay model from the model for the I think that was for the St. Francis. There's too much stuff in the way, so I'm going to just do it out here with the little, you know, handheld jigsaw, saber saw, and my circular saw with a fence on it, just to rip these 2x4s down to size. It's important to put this together so it can be deconstructed from the back, because once you have everything on there, if you happen to cast this and you don't do the mold and the mother right, it can lock into place. You don't want to break the mother, okay? If you can take out a bunch of screws on the back and take it apart, you're in a lot better shape. So I may show you a little bit of the actual saw work, but you don't need to just see me sawing work. I'll get this put together. These pieces, this is more than 28 inches long, it's about 30 inches long. So I can rip this down to the thickness that I need to be able to stand it up. I can cut it into 2 pieces and then trim the extra off. I have my 14s, and actually where it's longer than 14, that'll be better because I can mark it and have a little bit of overhang to each side. And same thing with this one. This one is closer to 16 inches long. To 36 long, so it's got to be 32. And I can have my overhang and decide which ones I want to overhang so it meets. Probably this has got more material, so I can butt it up against these and cut these right at 14. So I'm going to do that, but before I go, forget about it. I want to bring something up. Went down to Alberton a couple days ago about this project, and you got to get supplies, while you get the chance. I always try to go with extra money because I never know who I'm going to bump into. They may have a bucket full of chisels or a couple hand machines or whatever. You don't know. You just never know. And while I was in Miles to get some diamond blades, my favorite disco blades, they didn't have any 7s. And I'm like, hey, I want some 7s, a bunch of 6s and some 5s and some 4s, 4-inch blades. And so they checked up front and they said, oh, they're not making them anymore. They couldn't source the right materials or make the right deal or whatever. And I don't even think it's about tariffs. They just can't get the quality materials to make these blades that I've relied upon for 25 years. So what do you do? I bought what they had that I needed, and they said they're going to try to find a good source to replace them. But now it's a whole new game. So don't get complacent and think, oh, this is great. I got it all figured out. I don't need to learn anything new. I don't need to chase anything new. I'm pushing 60 years old. I've got all these things going on. I want to get down and carve. And now I find out that the only diamond blades that I trust, and I'm not kidding, the only ones that I trust on the market are done. They're just gone. So when I run out, I'm done with those blades, and hopefully there'll be some that come up and take their place. But the other blades I found, I haven't got the longevity out of them. I've talked about blades. The cheap blades, if you buy discount blades, you get deep in the cut and they'll just start to flutter like that. And all you can do is hang on like all your might and just let the saw stop. Because if you try to come out, that flutter will grab and that saw is just gone and it'll break your stone. So things happen. But I'm going to go ahead and saw a bunch of this up and cut this out, and I'll try to show you more of the assembly here in a little bit. All right, we'll be back. Okay, while I'm doing this, let me show you real quick my tools. I talk about spending some money to buy some tools that'll make money for you. Okay, that'll save you money in the long run. That'll make money for you in the long run. And I want to show you the few tools that I really lean on as far as small portable tools. And I hate to say that anybody can afford and anybody can find room for, but they really don't take up that much room. Okay, I like Makita and Milwaukee tools. I like Makita a lot. This is a Makita, I guess it's a 7.5-inch circular saw. Yeah, 7 1/4. I've had this for 30 years. Okay, I've done all kinds of work with it. It's really great. Buy the kit. You get a box. Comes with a wrench. It also comes with a fence. I've got this unplugged, okay, so it's safe. This is a fence. You can take and loosen here. You can tip this to do your bevels, but you can also put this fence in and you loosen this nut right here, this little thumb screw, and you can adjust this in and out to cut a controlled width, like a table saw, except this is cheap. It's not as, a table saw is probably safer, but this will work if you're careful. And so I use this to cut off my piece of 1/2-inch plywood to get a straight cut. I held my square on there and used it as a fence, as a guide, cut it right off real quick. Then I put this in and I figured out my calculated height that I needed. And I was able to use that to rip these 2x4s to the exact height that I needed. And this is straight. This is as straight as the edge, so it's almost a factory edge. And so I can put this, screw these together, and I've got my perfect height. Okay? Really, really, really versatile tool. And you can buy these, if you don't buy them new, you can buy them used, and they're, I mean, 50 bucks, 30 bucks, you can buy them really cheap. And I've had this Makita for almost 30 years. I bought it in '96, okay? A couple years later, I bought a Makita jigsaw, saber saw, I don't know what they call it. But it's a great tool. This one has what's known, it's a quick release tool. Is changes, so you just flip this bail and you can change the blades. Now this isn't good for thick cuts because this blade will tend to wander, and so you won't have a plumb vertical cut. It'll tip to one side or the other. For thin stuff, this will do 1/4 inch steel. If you go slow, you cut out all kinds of metal tools, whatever you need. You know, cut your squares up to make your compasses, cut the notch out to make your beams and everything. This will do it. All you got to do is buy one of these or something similar. This has a variable speed. It also has what's an orbital setting. There's 4 orbitals on this. What that does is that means the blade is either going straight up and down, or it's looping, and the looping will help clear the teeth when you're cutting certain materials that can clog the teeth and cause the blade to burn, fail, not cut, whatever. You lean on it, you break the blade. So if you can play with the orbitals and play with the speed. And like I said, you can cut everything from plywood and lumber and all kinds of boards and stuff to all kinds of sheet metal, you know, ferrous and non-ferrous. I cut 1/4 inch steel. When I've got to cut something really intricate, this is what I use, okay? And I just go slow, it works great. And I keep a variety of blades. So I've got for metal and wood. A lot of times you can find them on discount. I don't have anything in particular that I swear by. This also has a fence where you can attach a fence to it, and it works great. Same as this. You can cut an accurate strip. This is a Makita impact driver. It's a 1/4 inch. I love it. It's really great for driving screws and everything else. And you can ratchet as well. I mean, you can do nuts and bolts and stuff as well. Really good. Quick tool change. And I use that and a regular drill, just a Makita drill, to be able to drill holes, pilot holes, everything. And those cover a tremendous amount of territory. They're really, really versatile. Okay, I'm gonna get back to cutting this rest of this up, and I'll be back. Okay, I use my stencil knife to cut this cardstock out. You can use paper, you can use craft paper, you can use tracing paper. The cardstock is just a little bit heavier. It gives you a little more control. Just make sure that when you're cutting with your cardstock, with your knife, that you keep your fingers out of the way. Because if you don't, you'll end up running over your fingers. And that's not good, okay? Then you should be able to, and I cut through on the board. I tried to place it basically where I wanted it to be. And this is kind of like pouncing, where you poke holes through to mark your stone. But I wanted to show you a little bit here that I didn't finish the cut. Okay, I cut the center and I cut the edge, but I didn't cut them all apart. I did this because I want this, and now I can go through with my knife, with my pencil, and I can retrace this line that's been incised in the wood, so I can drill a hole with my drill and take my jigsaw and cut this out. And I also did the outside edge so that I can have a place to go with the clay. And that isn't as critical. You can let that run wild. But what this is going to do is this will allow me to do a fairly accurate model, so I can cast it. I'll put it on the wall, and it gives me another example of a different niche that gives you different options in terms of how you treat the subject, because this niche allows me to do some things with the composition that a regular straight-sided niche wouldn't do as well. It's just different, and sometimes having those options right there for people to see really helps sell something. Okay, I'll be right back. Go. Put this away and save it in the scrap pile that never gets thrown away until they're little bitty tiny pieces of scrap. See, I got a standing block right here. This is just to keep the some of the slivers out of the clay. This side actually is a little cleaner. I don't know if it really matters. And remember, this is going to have a little bit of clay over the whole thing. So if you've got a little wiggle, there's a little tiny crooked area right there that I'm not thrilled with. Like I said, you got to quit combing your hair sometime. You're not going to get it perfect. You know, you do, but a lot of times it'll be just a little bit of a bugger and you'll keep chasing it. You should have quit. That side's a little bit smoother. So I'll probably transfer these lines to my bottom all the way out here to the side. Okay, so I got my bottom line. And then look in here, mark my center line through. Mark my center line through. And then lay this on. Get my center line, and I can take my calipers that I had and mark this again. To get my approximate outer edge for my clay. Now I have to do I'll go on my bottom edge here to where it meets up. And having these outside reference marks really help, because when you start putting your clay together, if you only have it marked here in the bottom, you won't have, these will show, but if you skin this to where that's covered, they won't. So now I can take my plywood, and I've got a cleat on the back to help handle it, and I'll probably drill a couple holes in the corner. That sits on there just great, and then we can take our two different pieces put them right tangent to these holes. And we really don't even have to get crazy about measuring it. Because everything's going to line up. See, we can pull that down in. And this will guide us. We slide it over until we get it to where we want it to be. Get it all trued up. I'll probably try to line it up on the center line on the stone, on the plywood, because that's how I've got it laid out. I've already got a center line on this piece of plywood. And that gets me all set. See, I don't have to worry about being exquisitely perfect on the sides here, because all I'm going to do is fill this in. And so as long as I got the right height, we're all set. And because these are cut to width, you know, the 14 and the 16, they'll be tangent right here and on these. And so now I have to do is screw this in. I'll try to square this up a little bit so it looks pretty good. And what I'll do is I'm going to put a couple of screws in, and I'll probably try to find just some chunks of wood, just some scrap to put in here to build this up on these interior corners. And occasionally when I'm doing a nice straight niche, I'll keep some bevel pieces that you can fill in to help blend the scotia. I got enough clay, I'm just going to fill it in and block it in, because this is just a quick sketch just to put together what I'm going to carve instead of inventing it while I'm carving it. I can do that, it's just not the best way to get a great result. So let's see if we can screw this together real quick. There you go. Through the magic of video, I've got a pretty good layout here. I'm gonna go find some scrap to stand up in these corners. I've got some, I don't think it's quite tall enough. No, not quite. But I'll find some junk literally in my trash can to stuff in these corners just to bulk this up to try to block that so I don't have to use as much clay. Now, when you do this, you can go to great lengths to try to plan on the thickness of the clay and how deep it is and how much you got to add and how much you got to subtract. Okay, if you do this, like I'm doing this at 2.5 inches deep. That's pretty standard for something that's about 1.6, 1.4 tall. This is 1.4 tall. So if you go 2.5 inches minimum, at least 2.5 at the deepest spot, it'll be great. But I'll end up having clay on the ground and clay on top, and I'll probably skim it as I screed it off. It'll probably be about the same thickness on the bottom as it is on the top. I don't usually put much armature inside these. They're not that fragile. They tend to stay together, at least with this clay it does. And so I try to leave them so I can do anything I want with them. But you'll end up adding as much on the top as the bottom, and this is just a model. You know, if this is plaster, then you have to make it a little bit deeper, or cut on the stone a little bit deeper, cut it deeper. That's why we got the opposable thumbs. That's what's keeping us ahead of AI and the CNCs and everything, is we can figure it out on the fly where the machines have to calculate it. Okay, and I know that they'll come, they'll show us how it's done, but until then, we're still the winners. But this is how you put together a bat. I can't really get into doing the rest of this. This is just going to take me a little while, and I'm just going to come back and, you know, I've got rubber working on the bust, and I'll try to get video of that, you know, because I'm doing rubber, layer rubber, work on this, layer rubber, work on this, and so I can get two things done at once. I did have comments about using, you know, like a professional quality product, you know, smooth on products. You know, I use Silicon Incorporated product. I keep it in stock to do the models, as opposed to, you know, with the failure I had with the Silicon 2, that was just I got to the store and I thought about it and I got mixed up and I couldn't remember which were the 1 or 2, and I got 2. I got the wrong one. Put it on, took it off, no big deal. Silicone one will be fine. It's not a failure with anything except that silicone on that clay. Even that silicone is not recommended. The fish tank people don't use it. It's just not what you use, okay? It's got a different application. So I've used the smooth on products. I don't have any complaints about them. They're about, by the time you ship them, you'll spend $200 a gallon, okay? It's a lot of money. And I like to be able to keep what I need in stock and not a lot extra. It's hard to gauge how much you're going to use. If you're doing a really expensive project, you know, you can charge $100, $200 a square foot to do the mold. And it'll sell. A lot of time that's the margin. And so I've got to figure out a way to beat the competition. And I think I can do it just fine with my old, you know, simple ways, and that are a step above doing a waste mold, but there may not be the same as doing a mold that cost me, you know, a few $100 just for the mold and then the money to cast it. So, but, you know, spend your money, do what you want, and that's about it. I'm gonna wrap this up. I think we're probably long enough. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculpture Studio, actually out in front of Carolina Sculpture Studio, under the tree that needs to come down in front of the gardenia bush. It's almost ready to blossom. Talking about carving granite and putting together a bat to do a model. Thanks for coming in with a virtual stone carving apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.